Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, give a like, and don't forget to leave a comment. Enjoy watching.
"You're not scalable," Chase Goddard said without blinking, as if that empty phrase explained everything. Just like that, 12 years of work, 12 years of loyalty, 12 years of cleaning up everyone else's messes and keeping the ship afloat through storms no one even noticed, reduced to 3 ridiculous words and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I nodded slowly, because at that point, if I opened my mouth, I might have laughed in his face or asked if he practiced that line in front of the mirror. Instead, I just sat there, hands folded, pretending I hadn't already seen this coming 6 months ago when he took over as VP. I wish I could say I was surprised, but the writing had been on the glass-walled conference room since his second week, when he started throwing around terms like modernization, agility, and lean transformation, even though he couldn't tell a server log from a shopping list. Chase was one of those guys who talked like a TEDx video and shook your hand with both of his like you were closing a deal, not handing him your soul. MBA from somewhere shiny, ex-McKinsey or Bain, one of those resume guys who'd never stuck around long enough to see the fallout from their bright ideas. "Look," he said, trying to sound human, "you've done great work, Marty. Seriously. Everyone knows that. But moving forward, we need people who can think bigger, scale faster, be more adaptable." There it was again, scalable. Like I was a printer that ran out of ink too soon. I gave him a small smile, one of those tight-lipped ones you save for funerals and last goodbyes, and said, "Sure, I get it. Good luck with that." I stood, buttoned my jacket, and gave him a long look that I knew he wouldn't understand until weeks later, if at all. HR was already waiting in the hall, Marcy from legal, bless her paper-pushing soul, acting like this was just another Monday morning and not the start of a very expensive implosion. She handed me the standard severance packet like she was offering me a muffin, told me I could come back later for the rest of my things. I told her not to worry. I had everything I needed already. That was the first honest thing said in that building all week. Here's the part they didn't think through. You can't just delete 12 years of institutional knowledge with a handshake and a security badge deactivation. You can't just plug in a younger, shinier version and expect everything to hum along like nothing happened. Not when the entire damn department was balanced on little hacks, workarounds, and late-night patches I never documented because there was never time. Or because I knew this day would come, and I didn't feel like handing over a manual for my own replacement. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. That would have made Chase feel justified, like he'd made a tough but necessary decision. No, I walked out slow, calm, straight through the open office with its ridiculous beanbags and glass dividers, past the people who couldn't meet my eye. Except for Linda. Linda looked right at me and nodded. One small nod that said, "I know. And I'm still here." That meant more than she knew. I drove home with the radio off, hands gripping the wheel like I was trying to squeeze the truth out of the plastic. 12 years. I missed anniversaries. Skipped vacations. Took calls at my daughter's swim meets. Covered for bosses. Smoothed over disasters. Mentored kids who now ran meetings like they invented the place. And all I got was not scalable. The funny part? They thought they were doing this clean. They thought the future was bright, and I was just old clutter in the corner, a legacy system they couldn't patch anymore. What they didn't understand was that legacy systems bite back, especially when you never learned how they worked in the first place. By Friday, I was out. Gone. But by the next Friday, the cracks had already started to show. Small things, at first. Missed deadlines. Clients asking weird questions. The new guy, Derek, I think, emailed Linda about a database issue and got nothing back because she didn't have the credentials. Only I did. And I wasn't checking email anymore. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. I didn't sabotage anything, didn't touch a thing on my way out. All I did was stop helping, stop fixing, stop being the human duct tape that held 100 broken processes together. I figured if they really thought I was the problem, they'd be just fine without me, right? They weren't. But I wasn't about to tell them that. What would you do if your boss stabbed you in the back like this after years of loyalty? Be honest. Ever dreamed of flipping the whole table? Because I didn't flip anything. I just walked away. And then I watched it all fall. If you want to understand how a place falls apart, first you've got to understand what kept it standing in the first place. And for 12 straight years, that glue was me, whether anyone liked to admit it or not. It wasn't glamorous, and it damn sure wasn't thanked, but it was real work. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room or the guy with flashy graphs and endless PowerPoints. I was the guy people called when something broke, when someone panicked, when a deadline looked impossible and leadership just wanted it handled without knowing how. When I joined back in the fall of 2010, the company was barely hanging on, running on coffee, ambition, and systems that looked like they'd been built on a napkin during a hangover. I came from a competitor where I was burned out, but I still believed in solving problems and building something that didn't fall over every 3 weeks. And for a while, it felt like that's what we were doing, building something real, brick by brick, even if half those bricks came from my evenings, weekends, and missed birthdays. I kept a spreadsheet, for a while, of every weekend I worked past midnight. I stopped updating it after 3 years because the rows just made me depressed. The job became my shadow. It followed me home, crawled into bed, wedged itself between me and my daughter's school plays, between me and my wife until there wasn't much us left anymore. I missed her telling me she was tired of being second to a job that didn't even give me health insurance that covered her surgery. I missed a lot, actually. At the office, I wasn't a martyr. I didn't walk around sighing heavily or begging for praise. I just did the work. And for the people who paid attention, like Linda, they knew. Linda was the sharpest person I ever worked with, kept her own notes, knew how to spot bullshit from 3 cubicles away. She didn't need handholding, just someone to clear a path when the tech got weird or a manager forgot how logic worked. We had a kind of rhythm, silent understanding between 2 people keeping everything stitched together. Then there was Travis. If there's a corporate ladder, Travis was the guy already standing on the next rung, leaning down just enough to say he was helping you climb while quietly kicking you in the ribs. Always upbeat, always early to meetings, always copying leadership on emails that didn't need it. If Chase was the new face of the company, Travis was the reflection in his damn mirror, every word calculated, every compliment transactional. I never trusted him, and I was never wrong. Kevin, on the other hand, was green. Honest, probably too much. A bit jumpy, but smart and willing to learn. I liked the kid, and I kept him close because I saw myself in him, before the politics, before the ulcers, before I learned that loyalty was just a word they used to keep you quiet until the next quarterly review. In the final 6 months, things shifted. Chase came in all confidence and cologne, selling the board on disruption and velocity. I knew the type. Hell, I'd seen 4 of them come and go already, each one thinking they were the first to have the bright idea of automating everything and outsourcing the rest. He wore a $900 watch and talked about synergy like it was a physical thing you could touch. And he didn't like me. Not because I was rude. I wasn't. Not because I was slow. I definitely wasn't. He didn't like me because I asked questions he couldn't answer without revealing he didn't understand what the hell we actually did. I started noticing signs, little things. My project updates weren't getting forwarded anymore. Meeting invites started excluding me. Travis was spending more time upstairs. And then I found out about the reorg not from Chase, but from Linda, who overheard it in the break room 2 days before it was official. So I did the only thing I knew how to do when I saw the iceberg ahead. I started writing everything down. I documented everything. Processes, server configurations, permissions, workflows, every exception, every duct-taped solution I'd invented to get us through crunch time. But I didn't share it. I didn't upload it to the knowledge base. I kept it on a private drive, time-stamped and backed up. I wasn't planning sabotage, not really. But I wasn't going to gift wrap my replacement's training manual either. If they wanted me gone, then fine. Let them feel what happens when the glue walks out. I also started paying attention to conversations more carefully. Chase wasn't subtle. He wanted numbers that looked good, even if they didn't mean anything. He wanted to replace expensive experience with cheap enthusiasm. He wanted compliance, not competence. And I was in the way. So I waited, and I prepared. My exit wasn't spontaneous. Not really. They thought they were showing me the door, but I'd already packed my mental bags. I'd already warned Linda to back up her work somewhere safe. I told Kevin to start learning from YouTube tutorials in his spare time because no one was going to train him when I was gone. And Travis? I told him nothing. Let him choke on Chase's empty promises. 12 years I gave them. I was the guy who made sure the wires didn't cross, the servers didn't crash, the deals didn't fall through. I was the guy who stayed late and came in early, who fixed the thing no one else could even name. I was never flashy, never scalable. Just dependable. But dependable doesn't look good on a PowerPoint. They wanted shiny? Let them have shiny. But I knew better than anyone that all that glitters still breaks if you don't know how to fix it. So yeah, I saw it coming. I just let them think they were in control. And that, Right there was the first thread in the unraveling sweater. By the time the first full Monday rolled around without me in that office chair, my coffee was hotter than their systems and my living room was quieter than their Slack channels. I sat by the kitchen window, looking out over the backyard I barely used for over a decade, watching a squirrel dismantle my bird feeder with the kind of precision I used to bring to budget reports. I knew it would start slow, systems don't explode on day one. But by noon, I'd already gotten 3 text messages from former coworkers, none of which said anything more than, "Hey." So, Linda was the first to sound the alarm, even if she didn't mean to. I could tell by her word choice in a LinkedIn message she probably typed from her personal phone, probably while pretending to be busy in a meeting she didn't ask for. She said things like, "Just checking in, and hope you're settling into this next chapter." But the subtext was screaming. She was standing ankle-deep in the digital sewage of a collapsing workflow and trying not to admit that the pipes were leaking faster than anyone could patch them. The truth is, I didn't want it to go to hell, not really. I didn't hate anyone in the trenches, especially not Linda or Kevin. But I also wasn't going to call in, unpaid, from my own couch, to bail out people who decided I was not scalable. If I was outdated tech, then let's see how well the upgrade runs without the instructions. It didn't take long before Chase started sweating through his neatly tailored business casual. The man had a smile like a billboard and a brain full of buzzwords, but that wouldn't help him now. The ERP system I'd customized wasn't exactly plug-and-play. It had grown over the years into something almost alive, a Franken system of patches, half-documented scripts, time-saving automations, and workarounds that only I could trace through the spaghetti. It wasn't elegant, but it was fast, and it worked until it didn't. They brought in a guy named Derek, the new blood, the next-gen thinker, probably 28, with a beard that looked like it was applied with a sponge and a resume full of agile terminology. Derek walked in with confidence, and by Tuesday morning, he was asking where the main dashboard was. Not just the admin panel, he didn't even know how to pull the weekly performance metrics. I heard this from Kevin, who called me after hours, voice low and shaky, like he was worried Chase could hear through his Bluetooth headset. Kevin had always been the nervous type, but he was decent, honest. He didn't want to stir anything, but he was clearly getting dumped on from all sides. Linda was doing what she could, but without access to half the system tools and with Derek trying to delegate things he didn't understand, it was like watching someone try to do surgery with salad tongs. Nothing made sense anymore. Requests went unanswered. Clients started asking for updates that no one could provide. Automated reports didn't go out on time, or went out with blank fields and half the rows missing. Then came the email. Not to me, not directly. Someone, I'll never say who, forwarded it. The subject line was one for the ages. "Do we still have Marty's documentation?" I stared at the screen, half laughing, half sad, and fully unsurprised. The body was even better. Chase asking Travis if anyone ever got the full knowledge transfer from Marty and suggesting we should just ping him for a quick overview. As if that kind of knowledge just floats in the air, waiting to be downloaded with a smile and a Starbucks gift card. I didn't reply, of course. Let them stew. Let them discover that process flowcharts don't mean anything without context, that code snippets pasted into a shared drive don't carry the years of logic behind them. Let them realize that system access isn't just a checklist, it's a map to a city they never bothered to learn to navigate. They replaced the GPS with a shiny compass, and now they were lost in the woods, arguing over which direction looks more innovative. By Thursday, the reports hadn't gone out. One client emailed the CEO directly. Kevin told me Linda got pulled into a closed-door meeting with Chase and came out looking like she'd aged 5 years and 40 minutes. Derek kept suggesting new apps to plug into the system like Band-Aids, and every time something failed, he used the word legacy like it was a curse. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before, blame the guy who's not there. Easier than admitting you don't know what you're doing. I could have helped. I could have sent a file, or a login, or just a one-line tip to get the ERP unstuck. But I didn't. Because that's not how you teach someone a lesson. That's not how you get them to understand what they lost. I wasn't the hero, and I wasn't trying to be. I was just the guy who made sure the wheels kept turning, and when they told me I wasn't part of the future, I left. Quietly. Respectfully. But I also left the future to them. And now, as I sipped my coffee and read the words Marty's documentation with the kind of stunned desperation only a failing manager can type, I realized something deeply satisfying. They didn't just fire a person. They unplugged the power supply and forgot to save the files. and I was just getting started watching the lights flicker out. It happened faster than I expected, and slower than they could handle. One of those crashes that starts as a hiccup, turns into a cough, and then suddenly you're choking on everything you pretended wasn't broken in the first place. It was the second week after I left, and while I'd long since stopped answering calls or replying to those vague, "Hey, quick question" texts, I had front row seats to the unraveling. Thanks to a few well-placed allies who didn't forget who kept their heads above water for over a decade. Chase, the visionary VP with the jawline of a TV anchor and the patience of a toddler with a broken iPad, had officially shifted into damage control mode. He was blaming everyone, everywhere, all at once, and it was exactly the kind of chaotic finger-pointing mess that smells like desperation to anyone who's seen a company stumble over its own inflated ego. Linda, who'd been holding together the last shreds of coherence with duct tape and personal pride, got sidelined quietly. Her responsibilities reassigned, her authority cut in half with a smile and a calendar update. The meeting invites stopped including her. Her name got removed from documents. People started asking Derek for things they used to ask her for, and you could see the moment she stopped pretending not to care. Linda didn't yell or cry. She just stopped staying late. She stopped fixing other people's half-thought-out mistakes. And honestly, I don't blame her. They burned the bridge and expected her to keep watering the plants on the other side. Kevin didn't stand a chance. The poor guy was already stretched thin even when I was there to guide him. And now he was taking on 3 roles, none of which he had the training for, all while trying to meet deadlines no one could have met with twice the staff, and a miracle. I heard he snapped during a Thursday check-in, not the loud kind of snapping, but the quiet kind that HR notices when someone stops logging in on time and starts showing up late with blank eyes. He took a sick day the following week, and when he came back, he was different, like someone who realized the safety net was made of paper. Travis, on the other hand, was thriving. Or at least, that's what he wanted everyone to think. He stayed close to Chase, repeating his buzzwords in meetings, sending those self-congratulatory emails where half the team is CC'd and none of them care. He was streamlining and optimizing and leaning into innovation, which, in practice, meant he was copying old reports and updating the dates while pretending it was new insight. He started acting like he ran the place, and for a hot minute, Chase let him. Then the email dropped. I wasn't supposed to see it. It wasn't sent to me. It wasn't even written with me in mind, but the second it landed in my inbox, forwarded anonymously with the subject line, "Thought you'd appreciate this," I knew exactly who had finally grown a spine. The whistleblower email wasn't subtle. It didn't play games. It was a PDF attachment, a screenshot gallery, a digital confession booth, and a flamethrower all rolled into one. Timestamped Slack messages, internal memos, even a video clip of a screen recording showing Chase instructing someone to just override the compliance blocker, "We'll fix it later," which, for those unfamiliar, is the corporate version of "just drive around the cliff, we'll patch the brakes next week." The email was CC'd to the board, to legal, to 2 partners, and to a general company inbox. I didn't have to guess who sent it. There were only 3 people who would have had access to those chats, and only one who ever asked me if we were doing things by the book when Chase first started pushing corners instead of crossing them. Linda had finally fired her shot. By the end of that week, output had dropped to 12% of what it was just 2 months earlier. 12. They were missing deadlines, losing contracts, and apologizing for unexpected technical difficulties that were neither unexpected nor technical, just the inevitable result of arrogance and ignorance colliding in a boardroom. I saw the news clip online. A business blog headline, "Rising startup struggling with internal instability amidst leadership shakeups." I actually laughed out loud when I read that. Leadership shakeups. What a polite way to describe a corporate ego imploding on itself like a dying star. The company hadn't mentioned my name publicly, of course. Why would they? That would mean admitting they removed the wrong piece and watched the whole structure tilt. But behind closed doors, I knew exactly who they were thinking about every time a system failed or a client called angry or someone said, "Didn't Marty used to handle that?" That night, after reading through the entire email thread twice, I picked up the phone and called a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Not because I was in trouble, but because I had questions and I wanted to be ready. My old college roommate, Alex, worked in corporate legal counsel for a Fortune 500 firm, and he owed me one from way back. I told him what was happening in broad strokes, and he told me what to watch for, what to save, and what not to say if anyone came sniffing around looking for blame. We weren't talking lawsuits, not yet, but I wanted to understand where the lines were, in case someone tried to paint me into a corner. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't leaked the email. But I knew too much, and that made me dangerous to the people who built their careers on pretending none of it had ever needed me. And there was something else, something no one at that company had figured out yet. The final system backups, the ones they forgot to reconfigure after my exit, were still syncing to a cloud repository tied to my credentials. Legally, that would be a gray area at best, which is why I'd left it untouched. But if they came after me, if they tried to pin the downfall on me, I'd have receipts, and not just the kind you staple to an expense report. Everything was breaking, all at once, just like I knew it would. And I hadn't even touched a thing. 3 weeks after the email hit the board, after the meetings behind frosted glass turned from pep talks to damage control, and after someone finally whispered the word liability loud enough to echo down the hallway, Chase Goddard resigned under the classic umbrella of strategic differences. The press release was tasteful, vague, and so filled with meaningless buzzwords it could have been written by a broken AI prompt generator trying to impersonate a real human saying goodbye. No mention of compliance failures. No reference to department collapse. Just a new chapter, exciting opportunities, and a photo of Chase looking smug and mildly sweaty. It didn't surprise me, but I'll admit I read the whole memo twice, just to savor it. His resignation wasn't an explosion. It was more like watching a balloon with a slow leak spin helplessly across the room until it thudded to the carpet and someone stepped on it by accident. Quiet. Weak. Pathetic. The man who said I wasn't scalable had become the very definition of expendable. In the power vacuum that followed, there was scrambling, naturally. Meetings that should have been canceled were scheduled double. Managers who had coasted on charm and jargon were suddenly expected to perform, and most of them cracked like cheap porcelain. Linda, somehow, became the eye of the storm, steady, composed, and just pissed off enough to be dangerous. I got word through the grapevine that she'd been offered a leadership role. Not just acting interim. Real authority. Real say. She hesitated, I heard. Maybe because she knew the system was still flawed. Maybe because she'd watched what they did to me and didn't want to be the next loyal soldier thrown into the furnace when someone with a shinier title showed up. But Linda's smart. Smarter than I ever gave her credit for, even back when I leaned too hard on her during tight sprints and chaotic launches. I think she took it. Not for them. For the rest of the people still trying to do the job the right way, the hard way. And that's when it happened. I got the email. This time, it came from the CEO's assistant, someone I hadn't even met during my time there. The message was polite, formal, and almost apologetic in tone. They'd like to open a conversation about a possible advisory role. Said they valued my unique institutional knowledge. Said they were re-examining how leadership decisions are made and executed. I stared at that email for a full minute before I laughed out loud. They didn't want me back because they missed me. They wanted me back because their house was on fire and someone told them the guy who used to fix the wiring was still in town. They wanted a Band-Aid, a repairman, a quiet solution that didn't involve admitting they'd set the whole damn building on top of a single person's back and then acted shocked when he left and the walls collapsed. I didn't respond right away. I slept on it. I thought about my daughter, now a teenager, with a voice that could slice steel when she was angry and a laugh I hadn't heard nearly enough in the last 10 years. I thought about the smell of mulch under my nails from the backyard garden I'd finally started, and the way I didn't need alarms anymore to wake up. I thought about the silence in my house now that I wasn't glued to a laptop at 11 p.m. fixing problems caused by people who got to leave at 5. So I didn't take the role. Instead, I wrote something. Not a resignation letter. I'd already done that. Not a manifesto. Just a memo. One last internal document. I titled it, "You Built a House on Me." It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. But it was honest. I wrote about the real cost of burnout, the kind that doesn't leave visible scars but eats years off your life. I wrote about missed birthdays, empty apologies to my ex-wife, and how many times I answered a call from the office while sitting in a hospital waiting room. I wrote about how loyalty gets twisted into expectation, how above and beyond becomes the new normal until you're running on fumes and they still ask for more. I wrote about the people who build systems, not with code, but with time and care and sweat, and how those people get discarded when the system finally looks sleek enough to sell. I didn't name names. Didn't accuse anyone directly. I just laid it all out like a blueprint. A blueprint for the invisible foundation they build over my back. And then I sent it to one person, Linda. She's the one who posted it internally, not to stir chaos, but because, as she told me later, people needed to see what happened when you take someone for granted until they vanish. And it spread like wildfire. Printed copies on breakroom walls. Slack threads debating every paragraph. Half the team calling it the best thing they'd read all year, while others claimed I was bitter, unprofessional, or playing victim. Maybe I was. But maybe they were just mad I said out loud what they already felt in their bones. I didn't need them to love me. I didn't even need them to agree with me. I just needed to be done. And I was. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, someone in legal followed up on the cloud sync I'd left open, finally realizing that their entire document archive had been backing up offsite for weeks after I left. My legal friend advised me to close it, gently, cleanly, and document everything. I did. Quietly. No fuss. That's the thing about revenge. I didn't burn anything down. I didn't scream or plot or key someone's car. I didn't leak documents or file lawsuits or throw chairs. I just left. And when I left, I took my knowledge, my time, and my silence with me. I took the glue, and the structure fell apart, not because I made it fall, but because no one ever noticed I was the one holding it together. Now I garden. I pick my daughter up from school without checking my phone every 10 minutes. I read books that don't have bullet points. I sleep. And every once in a while, someone messages me to say, I finally read your memo. And I always write back the same thing. Good. Just don't build your house on someone's back and call it scalable.